stylistically, Brisbane and Richmond, before we play through the layers, what's the style battle?
Yeah, well, Richmond are the best with the footy. Number one at taking it coast to coast. Number one forward 50 over the last 6 weeks. Number one at turning any. If you give Richmond the ball anywhere on the ground, they're the best team in the comp at turning that into a score via score percentage. So give them the ball. All 8 teams, they're the best. So they're the best with it. And Brisbane are in real trouble now. They were a great defence there for a while. Now they're 13th without the footy. Their back 50s ranked bottom 3 in the competition over the last 6 weeks. They're allowing coast to coast 10th in the competition, which is probably the worst of the top 8 left. So you've got to trim the fat now. So I worry about this game for Chris Fagan. I think this is a game that could really get away on him unless Lachie Neale has the big game, because Richmond they're a ball movement team essentially, all speed, all punish, all power. Their forward line is absolutely humming. Last time they played, it was a cracking game. Don't know whether you want to talk about it now, but 6 goals up at half-time. Brisbane, Hipwood, Danaher, McCarthy, all hitting the scoreboard. Neale was winning clearances. They kicked 6 goals from clearances in a half. That's a massive statement. Won't happen. It won't happen in a final. It just won't happen. Damien Harvick won't allow that to happen. And then Richmond storm home. They win the second half by 7 goals. They have 30 inside 50s at a half of football against a pretty good side. So their ability to punish for Richmond is probably the reason when you watch them, you see the game meandering. Richmond went back, whoom, gone.
Yep.
That wing line speed, Rioli into Bolton, Dusty if he's down there, Jack getting ready, Lynch on the fly. So just the speed game with these two, I think is the oil and water. Brisbane want measured, long, take territory, low disposal, long down the line, all kicking. Richmond, they want ballistic handball with an edge of violence attached to it that threatens corridor at all times, that makes impossible for defenders to zone off their direct opponent because they're coming through the edge of the corridor, if you like. So it's going to be brilliant.
The Lions are living in the pressure index, is their finals record has them there. Their one finals win out of that 6 is at the Gabba against Richmond in a qualifying final, and the Tigers go on to win the flag. So that's the one upbeat there. The trouble, so it was concerning to hear Chris Fagan just reference Marcus Adams this morning. So it looks like he won't play again this season with concussion. It sounds really troubling behind the scenes. It's from a marking contest with Charlie Curnow at the start of the last quarter a few weeks back.
Yeah, it was. And this, it's. I often have this discussion. Can you change a player's behaviour? Can you ask a player not to run back with the flight of the ball? Now, I lose this discussion every time, okay? Because I think Geelong put this on the radar about 5 years ago, where they've got standards in their pre-season training. No one goes back with the flight. There's just no need for players to take these risks in a pre-season. We don't want players getting banged up. We don't want shoulder injuries. We don't want knee injuries. We don't want concussions. The Brisbane Lions were, it was 13 goals to 4. Start of the last quarter against Carlton. And Marcus Adams goes back with all the courage in the world and just takes the biggest lick of all time from Charlie Curnow, who takes the mark. And we haven't seen him since. I just wonder whether you can have this discussion with players. Don't put yourself in this situation. The game now says we don't need to do this. And we might leak a goal more or 2 goals more, but we'll have you. Because they're big bodies, Jared. They're 100 kilo, hitting 100 kilo. And coming back, you're coming back not protected. As much as you think you are and you side on and you put your arm up to spoil, it's almost like the contact was with his arm and then his own arm knocked him out on the way down.
It's a really unusual, so it's all about velocity because you're right, is the buffer between Adams' head and the contact from Curnow is his own arm. And so it's basically bicep jams into head, but the shake.
The jolt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's out as he lands.
And in a bad way by the sounds of things. I mean,
Yes,
that was
it
alarming,
does.
wasn't it?
Yep.
I mean, I think we're too quick to dismiss this. This is why the concussion discussion rages. He's still suffering and having trouble leaving the house. That was round 21. It's a long while ago.
against Richmond's tools. It does. So a lot falls to Payne now, who just got ruthlessly exposed in the Melbourne game. We are working on the assumption that Lynch will be right. That's the intel out of Richmond. When last we saw him, he was in pretty good touch, and Revolt as well. So they have to do it the hard way.
So the gap between Lynch just being out there, say he's 80%.
Yep.
I don't know whether you watch Hard Knocks at all, Jared, but on Hard Knocks, Dan Campbell, the coach, says, "No, hey, this is the healthiest you're ever going to be pre-season. Once the season starts, no one's at 100%, so get used to it." So if Lynch is out there, he takes the matchup, doesn't he? He takes Andrews. And Andrews is in good intercepting form, horrific defensive form. Okay, and I've said that for a month, and I've been challenged on that by the coach and by everyone. He is trying to help every other player in that back line. So it's admirable what he's trying to do, but he just needs to lock down a man. He just needs to say, Tom Lynch is not going to be a scoreboard impactor today. And then if Payne can do a reasonable job on Jack, great. If he can't, well, what's the most Jack can kick? And then you've got to worry about, can Starcevic do Dusty? And it feeds down. But just get your job done. I think Harris Andrews just needs to go back to being an old school back shoulder, less stand in front 15 yards, intercept marking. And I know that's a subtle change, or probably it's more than a subtle change, but it's not working at the moment, being that zoning defender in front, because you haven't got Adams there. You won't have Ainsworth there this week. So something's got to give.
Those two suspensions loom, or particularly Rayner, doesn't it, as losing Ainsworth from in defence. So they are makeshift down back at a time where they're out of form, and they lose Rayner, who I think he'd been spoken around as the X factor in a finals series, and he's not there for an eliminator.
So track back to form versus top 8. All right, so that's always the best guide. Does your brand work against the best? So this year, Brisbane 3-5 against top 8 teams, 1-4 since the bye. Richmond 3-3 in a draw, but their losses have been incredibly tight. It all points to Richmond, doesn't it? It all points to Richmond, and probably a disappointing end of the season for Brisbane.
Yeah, it'll be that if that's the way it goes.
6-5 for the last 11. Richmond 7-3 in a draw. So I mean, form says Richmond win.
Have you got that full ladder there against top 8 versus top 8?
100%. Yeah. What do you need?
We should go from top to bottom with that, I reckon.
We'll just pick them off as we go. So if you want Fremantle versus the Dogs, so the Dogs versus top 8 are 3-5. Beat Melbourne twice in Fremantle. Fremantle versus top 8 are 4-3 in a draw. The biggest problem with Freo is their ability to kick goals against the best. So they were 9-7-5 against Sydney, Richmond and Melbourne. Then they put 14 on the Dogs. So the biggest problem is can they stack a score?
Yep. Just repeat Brisbane and Richmond for us. Brisbane with 3-5.
I feel like I'm doing your homework for you.
Yeah.
Brisbane with 3-5, 1-4 since the bye.
And Richmond with 3-4-1.
Yeah, Yep.
All right, we'll move to the top 4
Richmond
teams.
with 3-3-1.
3-3-1.
Yep.
We'll move to the top 4 teams, and those encounters, we might put those in the debate and the preliminary final integrity with David King on the Monday Means Test next.